Hello, everybody. I will present a teamwork on multilingual corpus of illustrative examples on activity predicates. And luckily, I can step on the work and the presentations on my colleagues. So I hope I will be very fast and short. So you have time to take rest from this long conference day. In short, what I will present is the task of the creation of this corpus, how it was compiled, the resources we used, the selection of verbs, and the criteria for selection, the selection of illustrative examples, the challenges we met creating the corpus so far, because it's an ongoing work, and the annotation schema, which we are offering at this stage of our work, and the future work. As I suppose you understood, we are all working on this project describing the activity verbs. I will continue with the task of creation of the corpus. We aim at compilation of multilingual corpus of annotated illustrative examples of usage of activities verbs. The work on the syntactic and semantic analysis of predicates to represent languages like Bulgarian, English, Russian, and Italian. We are aiming at over 100 illustrative examples for activity predicates in Bulgarian, English, Russian, and Italian, 1,000, excuse me, including bordering examples that illustrate the scope of the class of activities in relation to other classes. And we also aim at offering annotation approach, and we try to label the frame elements within the semantic frame to provide material for the analysis of features determining the classification of predicates as activities as objective as possible. We are doing this linking various, we are creating the corpus linking various lexical, semantic, and conceptual resources in order to provide comprehensive description of verbs. Partially you heard about some of those resources from the previous presentations. And we are trying to provide cross-language alignment in terms of verb translational equivalence using WordNet and using the information of FrameNet in terms of participants in their semantic frames. Creating the corpus, we want to provide flexibility of corpus design to allow data from other languages to be added. And we also aim at annotation schema, which is flexible and facilitates the expansion of the scope and variability of the examples in the corpus. So you already heard how we define activity verbs, so I will not explain in detail Wendler's classification, which we use as a start point. You already got that activities are non-stative and non-telic according to this classification. And I can show an example which we use to show how which of the illustrative examples which we extracted are excluded and which are included. For example, the Bulgarian verb piše, first example, has correspondence in the English example, right? He wrote novels, piše romani, where the verb is non-telic, but the synonym of the verb, he wrote the book, написа книгата, is prefixed and is considered telic. because for Bulgarian we have verb aspect, perfective, which are verbs which are always telic, and some imperfective, which might have telic or non-telic interpretation. We also use as a criteria the context or the or the arguments of verbs, which graphically are the same and have a very near meaning, but the examples show different semantic interpretations. So if we have the first example, Той писал цял ден, he drank juice all day. This is non-telic usage because of the argument juice and about the argument all day, while in the next example, we have telic interpretation because the glass of juice is the border of finishing the substance. So how was compiled the corpus? These are the resources you heard from my colleagues and you already, I'm sure, know very well WordNet, so I will not explain in details what is WordNet. We are using the semantic classes as Eva explained, and the hyponymy and hyponymy relation. Although WordNet is a very rich lexical resources, we cannot use it for explicit semantic information about participant in the situation, although there is some partial descriptions. And it doesn't consistently reflect the different lexical meanings of verbs that can be referred to more than one aspect of was. So we're using for this purpose FrameNet. And as it was already explained about its structure and what it is, I will not stop on the first 2 points. So I will say only how we use it. A set of valence patterns derived from corpus evidence characteristic characterize each lexical unit. So each lexical unit we selected is described with valence pattern, which show the configuration of frame elements in the realization of the verb. So we use FrameNet to design annotation schema for a unified description of predicates and their specific syntactic realizations. And of course, we use Corpora to extract our examples. The first group of corpora we used are the monolingual corpora, which are the SEMCOR for English and SEMCOR for Bulgarian, where words are annotated with WordNet senses. And the corpus examples in FrameNet also are used as source for extraction of illustrative example because they are noted with explicit and implicit frame name elements, and of course the Bulgarian national corpus. We also use parallel corpora as Bulgarian English sense and close aligned corpus and Bulgarian English corpus, parallel corpus within the Bulgarian national corpus, which also involves a large parallel corpus with Italian and small Bulgarian Russian parallel corpus of fiction. And all 4 target languages are covered in the parallel subcorpora within the Russian national corpus. So I will go back to the selection of verbs because it's 2-stage work from a selection of verbs and selection of examples. So the verbs from 6 semantic classes were extracted from the Bulgarian corpus within the scope of activity verbs of imperfective aspect and prefix. We manually filtered them to allow an interpretation, their interpretation as an activity, but it wasn't exhaustive for precise words at this stage. So as you can see, the verbs of context and verbs of motion have biggest coverage here. We have these two groups much bigger than the verbs of creation, consumption, competition, verb body, etc. While selecting verbs, we excluded idiomatic and phrasal verbs and live verb constructions, as well as English verbs with no lexicalization in Bulgarian. As we are using the WordNet and the Bulgarian WordNet with its mirror version. And while selecting the examples, after that, we follow 3 steps. First, we automatically extract sentences containing the selected verbs with number of additional procedures to filter out candidates, and then check the example manually, and then mark the status of every example, if it is activity, borderline, or non-activity. And then expanded the data set with some manually connected examples. So far, there are 245 examples selected for Bulgarian and 257 for English. So the manual examples, the manually selected examples also disregards figurative or metaphorical contexts, and also verbs in passive constructions and other usage cases of ambiguous verbs which do not represent activity clearly. And about the annotation schema, which we offer, we consider that annotation aims at identification and characterization of the following syntactic components: a verb, its WordNet sense, and the semantic frame from FrameNet it invokes, noun phrases, which are matched to frame elements and serving as external argument or direct object, and prepositional phrases also matched to frame elements. And also we mark subordinate clauses which are marked with conjunction, or quotes which are marked with punctuation, or other lexical elements that realize frame elements. So if we have a look at the syntactic patterns in frame elements we describe in the annotation, we take a list of balance patterns for lexical units evoking given frame, and here I present an example of the frame text creation evoked by the verb write, with the meaning produce a literary work. So you can see balance patterns of the verb with direct object text, with prepositional group like time, or with adverb time, or with prepositional group team. And this is all the description of this verb, the exhaustive description. So of course, selecting verbs and selecting examples poses a lot of challenges. And as you can guess by yourself, this is dealing the ambiguity. And although we excluded metaphorical and figurative meaning, we still met a lot of example cases where the context is not sufficient to determine the meaning of the verb and its realization. And we also met a lot of borderline cases where it is not clear that whether the verb represented activity or doesn't. That's why I mentioned before in the previous slide that they also are included in the corpus in order to be evaluated additionally. And we introduced annotation of the statuses of each example as clear cases of activity and cases where the context contains elements which may suggest non-telic interpretation, and all the borderline cases which remain in the corpus. So we can see one of those examples to challenge you to. So if we have senses of the verb which are very close, we have the verb terse or search, and the two examples, през целия си живот си търсил това съкровище, you've spent your entire life searching for this treasure. We can see in WordNet these different senses of the verb, go in search or hunt for, seeking, and try to locate or discover or try to establish the existence of something, I'm sorry, we didn't translate the meaning of the last example, but examining things and processes in an area to research something. So sometimes the frames these meanings invoke are used to choose the right meaning in WordNet. So FrameNet and WordNet are used in parallel to define which meaning is used and which is the frame of the annotated example. Another challenge is parallel sentences with mismatch in translation. This is in parallel corpora. Like the example, we are not even out, and дори не се разхождаме, which whose translation is we don't even walk around. So the translation, the English variant is not activity predicate. So we exclude those examples. And of course, a lot of future work to do, finishing the corpus, as you got that it still has only Bulgarian English examples and they are not enough. So we have to expand the corpus with more data and with, of course, with examples and verbs from Russian and Italian also, and to continue with the annotation and expand and formulate objective annotation schema with new levels, and test the consistency of the annotation, and again analyze the borderline cases and challenges cases. Thanks to the project for the opportunity to study such interesting things in detail, and the funding of National Science Fund.